It is November 29th, 2019. I think this is the third, part 3 video of my memorial drawing in progress to Franco Cesana. And according to Susan Zuccati, author of The Italians in the Holocaust, Persecution, Rescue, Survival, he was born September 20th, 1931. The racial laws of 1938 in Italy caught him at age 7 in elementary school in Bologna. He had to leave for the Jewish school because he couldn't attend the state school anymore. And in a makeshift quarters in the synagogue. Unusually so for, he became the youngest partisan, as I mentioned in 2 previous parts, anti-fascist partisan to die in combat against the fascists. He was just, I think, 4 days shy of turning 13. And interestingly enough, he was religious and a Zionist, which is, according to Zuccati, very, very unusual in terms of Italian Jewish anti-fascist partisans. Most were secular, overwhelmingly so. And you think of the most famous ones, who would be like Carlo Levi, who was sent into internal exile in the South, author of the acclaimed book, very popular in the 1950s, called Christ Stopped at Eboli, or Eboli. And Primo Levi, who was not related to Carlo, and Primo ended up imprisoned as a slave laborer in the IG Farben industrial subcamp at the Auschwitz death camp complex. Anyway, both of those 2 different Levies were secular. Franco was religious and a Zionist. And it's a poignant little bit of text here. And his father died in 1939. Franco moved to Turin and entered a rabbinical school. He studied there and in Rome until 1943. When the Germans occupied Italy, Franco's family went into hiding in the Apennines near Bologna. There they moved from hut to hut, always in danger of betrayal and death. His older brother Lelio joined the partisans. Despite his mother's wishes, Franco ultimately followed. One day in September 1944, Franco ventured out on a scouting mission with his brother. He was caught by German rifle fire. His brother heard his last words, the most famous Hebrew prayer, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. In English, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. His comrades retrieved his body and returned it to his mother on September 20th, 1944, his 13th birthday. Franco Cesana was eventually buried in a Jewish cemetery in Bologna. His tombstone reminds the world that he was, quote, the youngest partisan in Italy. So after reading that, and then I read a few other pages, for example, about Eugenio Curiel, who I had depicted in another Under the Wings series artwork some years ago. I pulled another book off of my bookshelves. I wanted to see anything relating to imagery of synagogues in either Turin, Torino, or Bologna. I had bought this book some years ago, The Guide to Jewish Italy by Annie Sacerdoti, photographs by Alberto Jonah Falco. And in the chapter on Bologna, I was struck by this photograph, which is Palazzo Bocci in Via Giotto, excuse my Italian pronunciation. The facade of this building has a Hebrew inscription from Psalms and a Latin inscription from Horace. In the 16th century, the palazzo housed the Academy Armatina, a literary academy. Anyway, as soon as I looked at the photograph last night, I thought, oh, this kind of reminds me of the exterior of the Jewish school in Ferrara. where Jewish school children, kids, teens, whatever, went to after the racial laws in Ferrara. And I depicted the facade of the entryway in the drawing I did 10 years ago. Giorgio Bassani and 3 Ferrara scenes. It's actually 4, but we'll ignore that for now momentarily. Not important. Anyway, I using Alberto Falco's photograph here as an inspiration source, and I always try to attribute source material with the Under the Wing series works. I did a last hour or two, I did a pencil, kind of just sketch. Just went over it with some gouache, Gouache, like watercolor. And once this is dry later, I'm going to start going over it with ink, kind of similarly to how I did that. That's probably not going into focus. And, the actual artwork is actually hanging up near here, but there's not enough light there. All right, anyway, to be continued. We'll see how this turns out. So, and I'm thinking of doing something similar to what I did with the most recent mosaic drawing combo, which is in the Sightseeing with Dignity Human Rights Art Series. El Martirio de Rodrigo Rojas, the martyrdom of Rodrigo Rojas of Chile. He was 19 when he was murdered by Chilean soldiers in 1986. I'm thinking of having some sort of sea beasties, sea monsters, something or other, coming around. And probably not going to draw a wing. Had I drawn a wing, I would have had a wing on one side and the monsters there. But now we have the exterior of this once Jewish building in Bologna with Hebrew writing there. All right, to be continued. Enough yakking. Hacking a Chinik, as they say in Yiddish. Or Yinglish, excuse me. Anyway, it's nice there. We've got some sun out there, so off for a walk and then back to work.